Okay, let's dive right in. We're about to step into the shadowy world of targeted killings, a place where the lines between law and war, right and wrong, they get really blurry. We're going to use Israel's long and complex history as our roadmap to uncover not just how these secret wars are fought, but the surprising moral crises faced by the people on the inside and the pretty shocking conclusions they came to about the true limits of force.
So how do we even begin to understand this stuff? Well, we're not going to start with some boring textbook definition. Instead, we're going to drop you right into the middle of a real-life spy thriller that actually happened. This isn't a movie, it's a raw look at how these high-stakes games are played.
Picture this, Dubai, January 2010. We're in a 5-star luxury hotel. A senior Hamas operative is there, thinking he's safe. But he's not. This is the stage for one of the most brazen intelligence operations in modern history, and it's all happening in a friendly country, which just raises the stakes through the roof.
I mean, just look at the scale of this thing. We're talking 27 agents, a whole web of fake passports, all disguised as tourists and even tennis players. The mission itself, it went off without a hitch. But here's the crazy part. The entire operation, this masterpiece of spycraft, was completely unraveled by the most mundane technology you can imagine, hotel security cameras. A simple little flaw that exposed the whole team and sparked a massive international incident.
So, you have to ask, why would anyone even consider an operation that risky? To get that, we have to go way deeper than just tactics and spy gear. We need to get inside the core philosophy, the national mindset that drives these decisions.
Now this quote is everything. It's from the ancient Talmud, but it's not some dusty old saying. In interviews, intelligence operatives brought this up over and over again. For them, this isn't just a job. It's a deeply personal, almost sacred duty to act first against anyone who wants to wipe them out.
And you have to understand, that idea is forged in the fire of the Holocaust. For Israel's security services, the phrase "never again" isn't just a slogan they trot out. It is the absolute core belief that they must act, decisively and preemptively, to stop another catastrophe. If you don't get that, you can't understand anything else. Okay, so who are the actual players in this secret war? And how have their tools changed over the years? We're talking a massive leap from old-school spycraft to the age of drones and cyber warfare. Let's break down the agencies and their methods.
So it's not just one big spy agency, right? It's more like a team of specialists. You've got Mossad, the one everyone's heard of, handling the overseas stuff. Then you've got Shin Bet, which is focused on security inside Israel and the territories. And then there's Ammon, military intelligence. That includes the legendary Unit 8200, their version of the NSA, which is basically the engine behind a lot of Israel's startup nation tech. They all have their own turf, but for the big missions, they work together.
And you can really see how the tools of the trade have just completely transformed over the years. It's fascinating. You go from something so intimate and hands-on, like poison toothpaste, to something super clever like a booby-trapped cell phone. And then boom, armed drones change the entire game, letting you watch and strike from miles away. All while cyber operations are being born, letting them wage a whole other war online, draining bank accounts and creating chaos without firing a single shot.
Which brings us to the million-dollar question, right? For all the risk, all the resources, and all the moral baggage, does any of this actually work? Does it make things safer, or does it just pour fuel on the fire?
Instead of just debating opinions, let's cut to the chase and look at the hard numbers from one of the most violent periods imaginable, the Second Intifada. This was a brutal, bloody time, and targeted killings were used on a massive scale to try and stop the wave of suicide bombings. So did it actually make a difference?
The data here is pretty staggering. When Israel shifted from just targeting individual bombers to going after the entire network, the bomb makers, the recruiters, the commanders, the whole shebang, you can see the number and lethality of the attacks just fall off a cliff. The lesson here seems to be that while stopping one person is hard, you can systematically dismantle the organization that sends them.
But it's not just about breaking things. To really get the strategy here, we need to wrap our heads around two big ideas: deterrence and compellence. Think of it this way. Deterrence is like putting a big lock on your door to stop a burglar from ever trying to get in. Compellence is when the burglar is already in your house, and you have to physically force him to leave. One prevents something from happening, the other forces an action to stop. And that second one, compellence, is way harder and way more confrontational. And this is where it all clicks into place. What the analysts found was pretty incredible. Hitting military guys on the ground over and over. That often just led to more attacks, more revenge.
But the rare, high-stakes strikes on the top political leaders, that was an act of compellence. It sent a terrifying message that no one, no matter how important, was safe. And that pressure is what forced the political leadership to change course and agree to ceasefires.
Now, you might have noticed the words we're using here, and that's not an accident. The language itself is a battlefield. Assassination sounds illegal, like a political murder. But governments prefer the term targeted killing, and there's a reason for that. They're trying to frame it as a legitimate act of war, something governed by the rules of armed conflict. It's a way of saying, this isn't murder, this is war, even while critics are screaming that it's just a fancy word for the exact same thing.
But beyond all this strategy in the politics, what's it like for the people actually pushing the button? The pilots, the analysts, the commanders. For them, these aren't just abstract decisions. They're making life and death choices, and that carries an enormous weight.
This story is just absolutely wild. Back in 1982, the defense minister ordered the Air Force to shoot down a commercial airliner because they thought Yasser Arafat was on board. We're talking hundreds of innocent civilians. But the top commanders of the Air Force basically committed treason to stop it. They secretly sabotaged the mission, jamming their own communications, doing whatever they could to make sure that a manifestly illegal order could never be followed.
And it wasn't just the top brass either. There's this incredible story of a young analyst in Unit 8200 who realized an airstrike was about to happen based on bad intel and it was going to kill innocent people. In a split second, he made the call to cut the data feed going to the F-16, personally aborting the mission. He risked a court-martial his entire career because he believed it was the only way to stop a crime.
So after decades of this, thousands of missions, and so much loss on all sides, what's the verdict? What's the final takeaway from the very people who led these secret wars?
And the final word comes from a man you'd least expect it from, Meir Dagan, a legendary former director of the Mossad. And his conclusion is stunning. He says that for all their success, all the daring operations, they were just tactical wins. They could manage threats, they could buy time, but they could never, ever be a substitute for a real political solution. Lasting security, in his view, doesn't come from a drone strike, it comes from a peace treaty.
Which leaves us with a really chilling question for our own future. In all these stories, a human being was the final moral backstop, someone willing to stand up and say no. But as we race towards an age of AI and automated warfare, where an algorithm might make a kill decision in a nanosecond, who or what will have the authority to disobey? That's the challenge that we're all about to face.